All right, everyone. Hi, everyone. It's 8 o'clock and we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to Montessori for Preschoolers with our guest, Jean-Marie Pennell. Hi, Jean-Marie. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Hello, and thank you so much for having me here today. I'm super excited to be sharing all of this with everyone today.
And we're delighted to have you as well. So most of you might know Jean-Marie from the Montessori show, which we do together. And I'm so excited that she can share today all her experience working with a 3 to 6 year old. And I think we will get straight started. So I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so welcome everybody. And as Simone said, I am Jean-Marie Pennell, and I am going to be sharing all of the knowledge that I've acquired over the years on the Montessori preschooler, because Simone we know her as the Montessori toddler go-to person, beautiful book, but there's something after the toddler, right? So that's why we are doing this presentation today. So I am going to share my screen and we will get started. So, no. Why is it telling me all of this? Share screen. Okay. All righty. So here we go, and I'm going to hide this. Okay, perfect. So I hope everybody can see my screen. This is going to be about, like I said, the Montessori toddler. Oops.
The preschooler. You said Montessori toddler.
Oh, I made an announcement like that yesterday too. You know, you're in my head, right? It's the preschooler. And the preschooler, we are defining it as the child between 3 and 6 years old. So just a little bit about me. So for those of you who don't know me, I like to introduce myself. I am Jean-Marie Pennell. I am the parent of 2 young adults. So they were once toddlers and preschoolers. And I just feel grateful to have, you know, been a part of their life and still am part of their life. I think it is our parenting, how do you say, beautiful journey when we are interacting with these young adults who are really their own people, and it's just, to me, it's just it has been a beautiful journey. And just a little bit of background in Montessori. I have both birth to 3 and 3 to 6 diplomas from AMI, Association Montessori International, that is in Amsterdam, and Simone as well. I am the founder of Your Parenting Mentor, that's also known as Voila Montessori. And this I created really from what I saw a need for parents wanting to understand their children just better and having better tools. I think as guides, as Montessori guides, we get access to all this amazing information about our children, and it's not really passed on to the parents. So I have made it my mission to pass all this information on to you, because to me, it just opened up my eyes to just so much about my own children and the children I was working with in the classroom. I also recently started a podcast called The Art of Parenting. So I encourage you to check it out. I do weekly interviews. One of my first ones was actually with Simone, and that has been a lot of fun to keep on learning from other professionals in the field of parenting and child development and such. And then my main passion is just being a parenting mentor to parents all over the world. I work one-on-one or in group settings, and I bring in my Montessori, my positive discipline, and conscious parenting, mindful parenting, and all of that. And then just as Simone already mentioned, co-host of the Montessori show, which has been 4 years of doing that, and that has been just wonderful. I know I constantly get feedback on how helpful those are. So check those out if you haven't yet. So that's enough about me. Now, what we will cover today is really, what does Montessori look like for the 3 to 6? And I'll share a bit of, my experience actually working with 3 to 6-year-olds in the classroom. And then I want to help you really understand how you can support them in your homes. Because remember, you are their first teacher, their first guide, and the most important one. So I want to help you there with, how to do Montessori activities at home. Some of the ones that, I think are important, and then those that I would rather stay in the classroom. So we'll talk about that. And then also just, creating those calm, engaging spaces. A lot like Simone has shown you for the toddler, the 3 to 6-year-old has different needs, so we just adapt it a little bit. And then we will end with some positive discipline tools and strategies for you to really be working in a respectful way with your 3 to 6-year-old. So that's a lot to cover. So let me start with my definition of Montessori. And really, and this is a really brief overview, because I am assuming that a lot of you on the call were called to attend because you are familiar with Montessori and you know its main principles. But when we think of it in the educational aspect, it's really this idea that it's education as an aid to life. It's really about understanding human development and how we can support our children to adapt to their time, place, and culture. And that's really the idea that the child has this inner drive to learn. So we are really there to help them along and to guide them. And it's true that in the Montessori classroom or in the Montessori environment, we actually call ourselves guides, not teachers. So we know that it is child-driven, meaning that contrary to maybe the education you might have received, I know the education that I received, which was more traditional, where it's really about the adult, it's kind of top down, it's the adult deciding what the children need to be learning. Here, we're changing it around. We're really following the child because they come to us with just this immense curiosity and this ravish appetite to just figure things out. So we want to guide them along this beautiful journey. And so we really want to follow them. The other aspect is, of course, this idea of preparing the environment. So preparing it specifically for their needs, for their age group. So today we're specifically talking about the 3 to 6-year-old. The environment looks very different for an infant. It's going to look different for a toddler. It's going to look different for an adolescent. But we're preparing it really to ease adaptation, to ease their entering into the world and their culture. And we want to set up that environment for them. The other aspect, and this is again, there's parallels in the home, but I'm also focusing right now in the classroom and really wanting to compare with kind of the traditional way. And one of the aspects is this idea of freedom of choice. The young child, when they come into a Montessori classroom, they have the freedom to choose the work that they want to spend their energy on. And so there are limits to that because it's limits and order in the sense that in the 3 to 6-year-old, and I know it's a little different in the toddler classroom, but with the 3 to 6-year-old, really the child will work on presentations, on activities, only on the ones that they have been shown how to do. So that is a limit. That is a limit to the environment. And the fact that they are a mixed age group, the environment is set up for them to be there for 3 years. So when, for example, a young child, a child that's just entered the environment is going to maybe take off the shelf a work for a 5-year-old, the only thing that we need to ask them is, oh, have you had a presentation on that? And that's it. And they know that that is kind of this, kind of unspoken rule, but it is also spoken.
Where are your pencils, baby?
Whoops. It is kind of this limit that the environment is really giving them, feedback that it's giving them. Like I said, it's mixed age group, meaning that they are together for a period of about 3 years. I had children as young as 2.5 through 6 years of age, and it is really beautiful to see their progression for that long, and also the benefit that the 3rd year child has to have been there those entire years and to be able to really share their knowledge with the younger children. It's just beautiful. So if any of you are thinking of, putting your children in a Montessori environment, really, I want you to take into consideration to really give them the gift of being there for those entire 3 years. The other aspect of the 3 to 6 year old classroom is this idea that we are based in reality. We are based in concrete information. So the fantasies and fairy tales and all that are not in the environment. We really want to give the child the knowledge of what is. And the child is eager for that as well. They want to know what things are, why things are, and such. So we really stay in the concrete at least until 6 years of age. The other aspect that I think is very, very important and very different from traditional schools is this idea of freedom of movement. Movement is an integral part of our well-being. We know that movement is part of our brain development. We know that children are in perpetual motion. So to ask for a child to sit still at a specific place for an allotted time that the adult has decided needs to be is unfortunately, I think, pure torture for a young child. So movement is actually used in the classroom as part of the presentations of sitting as far away from a presentation and having the child kind of walk back and forth, and there's just a lot of movement encouraged. The child can take out a work rug and sit on the floor or sit at a table. I had the privilege of having an indoor-outdoor environment because I'm in Southern California, and they could go inside or outside, and it was just beautiful to see that they get to choose where they work and also walk around when they need to walk around, right? Another extremely important aspect, and this is also, we'll talk about this more with the home, but this idea of uninterrupted work cycles. And this really, all it means is protect their concentration, respect their flow of work. We, unfortunately, unbeknownst to us, we are constantly interrupting our children. And I don't know about you, but I know when I am working on something such as this presentation, I like to be left alone, and I turn off all notifications and I just want to be in my flow. Well, it's the same thing with children. And as the child is getting older, the 3 to 6 year old, their flow is actually getting longer and longer. And so we need to be extremely respectful of that. And so in the Montessori, children's house, uninterrupted work cycle is usually about a 2.5 to 3 hour cycle that the children are allowed to choose the work that they want, or they're being given a presentation by one of the guides. But what is important is that they are allowed or given the opportunity to repeat the work as many times as they feel necessary to do so. Because we know that children need repetition to be able to master a skill. So the child, if left alone, will repeat something over and over and again until they are satisfied, until they go, "Ah, I've got this." And then they will move on to the next one. So that is the beauty of this uninterrupted work cycle, because it really permits that. It really gives the child this opportunity to repeat, contrary to traditional schooling, where we're kind of time managing our children and interrupting them to change and go to another activity and such. So, and this is also super important at home. And then, of course, trained adults. All of this also, for those of you who are looking, possibly to enroll your children in Montessori schools, these are all, for me, things to be looking out for. Montessori, there's kind of different Montessori schools. They're not all equal. So for me, it's really important that you do your homework and that you do a little bit of research, that you go and you observe to make sure that it is a mixed age classroom, that they are having uninterrupted work cycles, that they are being left to choose their work and such, because you will see there are some differences, and Montessori was never copyrighted, so it's really up to us to be careful. And at the same time, I will say, there are beautiful schools that might not have all of these aspects, but the human beings, the guys, are just so lovely that you want your children in there. So for me, I always encourage you to take the time to go observe. Do the children seem happy? Are they engaged in their work? Are they, are they happy? Do you think that your child would be happy there? Would your child thrive there? Is really important. And then just a reminder that Montessori is from birth through university. There's actually a school that is going to be opening here soon, and I'm not sure I shared this with you, Simone, but it's called Birth to Career, and it's all Montessori based. Public school, and to me, that is just so beautiful, because it really is about an aid to life. So that's kind of my quick run through on Montessori education. So let's talk about this wonderful preschooler. So as we know, he or she, 2.5, 3, and they're still in this absorbent mind mode, which is really this knowledge that we have of now human development, that the brain, the first 6 years of life, is really this amazing sponge that is just absorbing all of this knowledge, all of these feelings, the culture, the good and the bad. Like, they're just absorbing everything. And the preschooler is what we call a conscious learner, because up until now, the infant and the toddler were kind of driven by this life force of, just get out of the way, let me figure things out. And they're unconsciously grabbing at everything. Here suddenly, and for those of you who do have a preschooler, you might have noticed that they kind of look at you differently. Like, they're suddenly aware that there's somebody else than themselves. And it's really fascinating, because they do kind of suddenly have this consciousness of other people. The other thing we know, they have this curiosity that is just beyond. Sometimes it's like, for us, sometimes it's overwhelming, because they want to know what everything is, why everything is the way it is, and such. And that you will see is also a progression, because they kind of are about what, especially when they're acquiring language. So kind of the older toddler, and then they'll go into the why. They want to know why everything functions the way it does, why people act the way they do, why you feel a certain way, why is the sky blue, all of these things. And sometimes it's true, it can get overwhelming, because as parents, we don't always know the answers. And that's okay, because this is part of this partnership and this journey that you're on with them. So it's wonderful to just say, that's a great question. Let's figure it out, because you don't always know the answer, right? And I have a clear memory of my son, why, like in the car. And sometimes I was like, no. And he would say, but why? So it's just, it's to me, it's just a wonderful time for you to brush up on things. They want to know everything. So very important. And then this idea also of this concrete thinker, meaning that it's about them needing things to hold on to figure out. And we'll talk a little bit about how the Montessori material helps them with that, of really being really their foundation in the reality. And that's why it is reality based. They're refining their skills. They're refining all of those skills that they've acquired up until now, right? They figured out how to communicate. Well, they're refining that. They've figured out how to walk. They're going to refine that. They've figured out a lot of things, and you'll see in the activities, it's really about building on the skills that they already have. They're able to focus for a lot longer than the toddler was. Their attention span is getting longer, and that's why I say it is so important for us to respect that, to really give them the time that they need to follow through an activity or finish an activity or repeat it as many times as they need to. They've become very aware of their environment. I know toddlers are as well, but it seems that here they're really like taking it a step further, where they still are very attuned to the order of things. They want things clean. I remember I had 2 children in my environment. I mean, they would take everything off the shelf. I kid you not. Take everything off, wipe it down, dust all the material, and put it back. And that was like something that satisfied that need of being in an environment that feels good, that feels clean, that feels orderly. When they do arranging flowers, it's really about putting a bouquet of flowers on their friend's table, and it's really this awareness of their environment that is beautiful, that with time will pass. So take advantage of this time. They do have, what I've noticed is a tendency to want things to be perfect, and some have it more than others. So here for me, it's really about us as their guides, you as the parents, to be vigilant of that, to not let them get too obsessed with it, because this is, to me, where we're really also helping them have well, hello there. Where we're really helping them have a growth mindset. And and so here, it's about, oh yes, that looks really hard to do. And I trust that you can do it. I know, I have faith in you that you can figure this out. And if you don't want to do it right now, put it aside and you can come back to it later. So really kind of encouraging them to keep, kind of pushing themselves without, we have a tendency to say, oh, it's no big deal, it doesn't matter, but it does matter to them. So really helping them understand that, yes, something might be hard, and I'm going to keep on trying. And that's, to me, is really important. The 3 to 6 year old still has their baby teeth. And when they start losing the baby teeth, then we no longer have a preschooler. We start having the child that is going to go into the elementary. So that's actually a physical difference, that all their baby teeth are still coming in, and they will start losing them at the end of that stage. They've become wonderful communicators, verbal communicators. They want to refine that. They want to know big words and complicated words. So here for me, it's really important to give them that. And we'll talk about how to encourage language in the home as well. And a very important thing that the preschooler is still developing, because the toddler definitely started, is what we call the development of the will. And for me, you know, I hear often parents kind of telling me in almost a complaining manner of, oh, I have a strong-willed child. And I have to say, you're really lucky, because it's actually quite good to have a strong will. It's developing, and we are here to help them harness it, right? It's the will is really about having choices. It's really about knowing what is important for ourselves. It's about self-regulation, all of that. That is all developing, and it's getting more and more mature for the preschooler. And then their memory is intense at this stage, and their reasoning and all of that is developing. So your preschooler is amazing, amazing. All these intellectual faculties that are really coming into play. So here I just wanted to show you briefly, for those who you know have read about Montessori and such, you might have heard or read about the 4 planes of development. And this is what Dr. Maria Montessori came to realize, along with some of her colleagues, that the what we call the constructive rhythm of life from birth through 24 years of age can be divided into these 4 planes. And so today we're really only talking about this little area, those 3 years in infancy. And this is where we see, you see that the yellow triangles are periods of really transformation and development. So infancy, and then again adolescence. But in infancy, this is the time of the absorbent mind. And the birth to 3 years was the acquisition of a lot of skills. Like I said, the communication and motor development and such. 3 to 6 is going to be the refinement of all of that. And it's also what we call the conscious learner. So, and it's, to me, it just, you know, fascinates me that she came up with this more than 150 years ago, and we are, I mean, now it's being proven with brain, you know, scans and all of that. So that's what we're focusing on. And it's really, it is the child that just says, I want to do it by myself. And one thing I will say, just a little reminder, is that this period will be, again, a repeat in adolescence, where the adolescence just says, don't tell me what to do. And they're really repeating to that. And you will have all of this when you get the replay as well. So let's talk a little bit about what the Montessori environment for the 3 to 6 year old looks like in kind of the school setting for right now. And when we say the Montessori casa is the house. Casa de Bambini was, the children's house was Dr. Montessori's first school that she opened in 1906. And this has evolved since then, but this is pretty much how we set it up today. And again, if you're looking around for Montessori schools, this is something to just be aware to make sure that this is in your child's environment. And remember, this is always mixed ages, so 2.5-year-olds to 6-year-olds. The environment is really divided up into 4 major areas, and that's how we set it up. We always set it up from left to right, so from the easiest to the more difficult, left to right. The material, just like in the toddler environment and such, are on shelves, on, orderly. They're always self-sufficient and such. The only difference here, and this is interesting, is the toddler often has a tray with material, and they work in the tray. The primary child, the CASA child, is going to take everything out. We have like this whole, all the presentations just are a little bit longer, a little bit more intricate. There's more steps to it. There's more material to it. And, there's a real intention about how you set it up. You take it off the tray, you put it on a mat, and there's the whole cleanup. So it's just a lot longer of a process. And oftentimes they're the same activities that they had in the toddler community. They have more steps to them, basically. So the 4 areas are your practical life. And practical life is often really was set up to be the link between the home and the school. So there's a lot of activities that they've been watching us do at home that they now get to do in the environment. So that's practical life. And practical life is also very important in what we call the indirect preparation to more academic work. Practical life is about sequencing. It's about measuring all of these things that are really preparing you for more academic work later on. And some of the material to me is just amazing. And I'll talk a little bit about it in the practical life, but it's really is like the intention behind it is amazing, and how it really prepares us for the academic work. And then the sensorial is really, again, to help them refine their senses. And this we give the essentials. So and I have a slide on sensorial, so we'll talk more about that. Then language, mathematics, grace and courtesy are all of the things, the social skills that we need. There's things of just how to open and close a door without slamming it, or how to welcome a guest in our classroom, how to offer them tea, all of these things. These are grace and courtesy. And this can be done at home, and this is repeated daily, multiple times a day. They need reminders. We need reminders. It's just beautiful lessons of just etiquette, really. Then there's a lot of music and art, botany, geography, and just so on. I mean, those 3 years are just amazing. And I know I felt greatly honored to be in that classroom and to be showing them all these things during the training. I feel like I relearned so much working with this material. So beautiful material. So practical life. And practical life, here you have a little photo. This is when I first started in the Montessori classroom. I actually was not a Montessori teacher from the very beginning. I came as a graphic designer, and I'm about 45 years old here. I'm working with other people's children, and it was just beautiful. So like I said, practical life is a link between home and school. Indirect preparation to all of the other activities that come in, that will come later. Preliminaries to the more academic work. We care about the environment. We care about the indoor environment and about the outdoor environment. So whether it is about setting a table or gardening or cleaning up, sweeping, mopping, sponging, all of those that's considered practical life. Also care of the person, where we refine the skills of being able to button, to tie bows, to sew, to take care of ourselves, make braids, all of these. So that's the care of the person. Social relations are that grace and courtesy that I was mentioning. And then movement. Movement in the use of movement, but also in the restraining of movement. There is a beautiful lesson that we do, not right at the beginning of the year because it takes some preparation, but it's called the silence game. And it is so beautiful, and it comes actually from Dr. Montessori going into a 3 to 6 year old classroom with a newborn. And she placed the newborn in front of them and asked the children, I wonder if you can be as silent as the child, because the child was sleeping. And so they had to self-regulate. They had to kind of sit still and be mindful. And it's a beautiful game that I would do in the classroom, but it's usually towards the middle of the year when we've adapted and we've learned to self-regulate and everything. So a lot of movement. And then you've probably heard also of walking on the line. In most children's house, you're going to see an ellipse drawn on the floor. And this again is to refine movement, is to refine balance, it's to refine equilibrium. And we walk on the line, we tiptoe on the line, we walk with holding things, we have something on our head. I mean, it's just all of these activities of refinement. Excuse me, one second. So then sensorial. Sensorial, as we know, the young child is a sensorial learner. Up until now, they've been, touching everything, they've been mouthing everything because that's how they need to figure out what the world is made of. The sensorial area in the classroom is really, again, to help them refine all of their senses. Here, though, we have to be careful to give them only the keys, meaning that we're not going to give them, for example, I have gustatory, so the taste. We're not going to give them all of these different tastes. We're going to give them like the 5 basic ones of bitter and sweet and sour, and then we're going to let them refine that because we're just giving them the key of knowing that there's different tastes, right? Same thing with smell, same thing with the visual. The auditory sense in the sensorial area actually is pretty extensive, where first it's really about matching sounds to these little sound boxes, which I believe you have in the toddler environment, correct? Simone, maybe, yeah. You
Sorry,
do?
I was muted, but no, we don't do the matching sounds in toddler.
No, okay. So this is a new experience where it's really cylinders with this same amount of beans, but you're checking what sounds louder and such, and you match them. So again, very preliminary keys. We're refining, and this also, as guides in the classroom, helps us also detect if a child has a hearing issue and such, because they are pretty subtle. And then we take them through the bells, which is about learning the scale of music, learning to recognize notes. And that, for me, I relearned all of that because it was just so intricate and beautiful. And through those 3 years, they will actually be able to read music, and some will actually compose music. So it's a beautiful sequence with the music, with the auditory sense. Then there's tactile. So this is, we know that the young child is very in tune with this sense, especially the new preschooler, the one that is entering the casa. So there's a lot of, again, refinement of what is smooth, what is rough, and such. So we're training them to know the difference. Then stereognostic. This is a sense that is, to me, fascinating. And it's actually, when you think of it, It is, you know, when you put your hand in your purse or in your backpack and you're looking for something, but you're not using your visual sense, you're just feeling around and, oh, these are my keys or my phone or my wallet. That's the stereognostic sense. It's the memory of what something feels like and to be able to recognize it. So we work on that with all sorts of different activities as well. And then lastly, it's all of the different material that we have in the sensorial area that does not isolate just one sense, but that is multiple. And a lot of the sensorial material are actually preliminaries to the mathematics work. So there's a lot of kind of your preparation to geometry and to length and all of that in the sensorial area before you're given the math presentations. Then we have language. So language, and this is, you know, for us to have good communicators, language is so important. For language to occur, we need to have, you know, proper auditory functioning, auditory sense, vocal cords, a rich language environment, and the desire to want to communicate. So here the language area is set up to, you know, from day one with storytelling and conversations and such on a daily basis. When we start seeing the child be interested in the symbols of our written language, we take them down this beautiful road of discovering what each symbol sounds like. So this is very important. And for those of you who have children at home who are interested in the symbols of the written language, it's really important to give them the sound as opposed to the name of the letters, because it is with the sounds that we put the sounds together and we become readers. And in the Montessori classroom, one thing that is fascinating is that we actually write before we read. And so let me explain this. Writing before reading means that writing is a self-expression. It comes from within. It's something that we're eager to share. Reading, we're reading somebody else's thoughts. So children are eager to express themselves. So we start them on this road with the sandpaper letters, which is using that tactile sense that they're very attuned to. It's also the muscular memory of the shape of the letter. And we start with cursive letters. So this is my training. Not all Montessori, you know, classrooms do this, but most of them do start with cursive because that's what we write cursive. And the beauty with cursive is there's no confusion with the letters, because, for example, when you look at print, a B, a D, a P, a Q is really a circle with a stick. But in cursive, they all have their different personalities, so there's no confusion. And so we start with these sandpaper letters for the shape, the sound, and the muscular memory of how to write them. Then we move to what we call a movable alphabet. Once we see that a child recognizes several sounds, we invite them to open up this beautiful box with all these different shapes of cursive letters that we can put together because we know the sounds. So we can put a k, a, t, and we're writing. And the interesting thing is that we're never testing them in the sense of, you know, what did you write? What is that? We just let them experiment. When we observe that they're reading back what they wrote, or they're trying to decipher what a friend wrote on their mat, then we know we can take them down the road of reading. And in this photo, this is one of the first lessons of reading that is just spectacular, because it's almost like the same as when you see the child that first takes those first steps where they're just so enthralled with themselves, like, oh my gosh, I figured this out. Well, it's the same thing when a child reads back something. And there's a video of this on my YouTube channel, which is the phonetic box, which is really about, again, we have little objects that are very phonetic sounding. So for example, cat, and we write it and we give it to them. We fold it up and we give it to them like a little love note. They open it up and they sound it out. Cat. And you see in their eyes like this amazement of like, oh my gosh, I can read. And then there is just, you take them on this beautiful road of reading. So that is beautiful, and you can tell I'm pretty passionate about that. So then there's, of course, they're there with us for 3 years, so we're going to refine language. We're going to do word studies. We're going to do the function of words. They're going to be creative writers and be able to read and interpret what other people are trying to share with us. So the language is pretty amazing. Then we have mathematics. And mathematics here, again, this is all things that you can, apply more or less at home. And I'll get into a little bit more detail with that. But mathematics is really at first the notion and the understanding that each quantity has its own personality, basically, has its own entity. So we really, this is again very concrete, because it's with material that they handle, that they hold in their hands, so that they can feel what it feels like to hold 8 spindles in their hand as opposed to 1 spindle. And so they get this understanding of what quantity is. So we will really take them down this road of the different quantities. And parallel, we also show them what the symbols of what are the number symbols. And slowly we associate the two. So it's really about quantity and symbols and then associating them. And, be aware that your child has an immense memory. So when somebody tells me, oh, my child knows how to count to 100, because they are reciting the numbers in order, that's beautiful. But I sometimes doubt that they understand what the actual value of 45 is, or 3. It's, for them, it's just, it's kind of like the ABC song. They don't necessarily know the sounds of the letters, right? And so this is the same thing. So it's really about understanding the quantity, and I'll share how to encourage that at home as well. And then once they have this association of quantity and symbols, then again we take them down this road of exploration. We explore all of the operations, memorization of tables, fractions, division of fractions. It's just amazing what this young mind can absorb and take in when given the opportunity. And again, this is the math material is very concrete at the beginning, and then takes them down this road of really mental math. So really being able to abstract. Here in the photo, for example, is what we call the second decimal tray. And it's, as you can see, it's actually quite beautiful to have in your hands. They're glass beads. So the 1 is a unity, then there's the 10 bar, the 100 square, and the 1,000 cube. So this is, they're feeling it. It's weighted differently. But then as we take them down the road of abstraction, we use an abacus. But then later, they don't even need the abacus, because it's all mental math, because they're able to abstract. So again, a beautiful sequence that we take them on. Then music and art, as I mentioned, it's really about the refinement of the auditory sense, the sounds, the note, composition. Art exploration is really self-expression, learning about the different artists, and also the different mediums. There's always, art activities on the shelf for them to do. And it saddens me because sometimes I've heard, of Montessori schools not being creative. And to me, I would say that that's not the case, at least for the classroom that I had, or a lot of the ones that I've seen. There's always something to be, creative and have artistry in our lives. So beautiful. And music too. Like I used to dance a lot with my children, or put on music. So it's really part of the daily life. And then here, geography, this is just really to illustrate the intentional and very, for me, just genius in the sequence of activities. So for example, in geography, we first learn about land and water. We have a globe that is a sandpaper globe. The earth is rough, the water is smooth. So that's it. We just learned about land, water. Then we go continent and oceans. Same globe, but it's got the continents in different colors. So there we learn about continents and oceans. Then we have puzzle maps. We have a puzzle map of the continents. Then we have puzzle maps of each continent. Then we can have puzzle maps of each country. So it really takes them down this road of exploring geography in a very sensorial way. And it is fascinating to me. I had 5.5-year-olds who could take out a puzzle map of a continent, identify each country, identify the flag of each country, and identify the capital of each country. I mean, to me, that's beyond what I'm capable of doing. And it's just fascinating because, like I said, they have this insatiable, curiosity and need to learn and acquire information. So for the, child who's fascinated with geography, they will take you down this beautiful road. And here is a photo of a child working with the puzzle map and also what we call geography folders that we create of different images of the cultures, of the vegetation, of the animals of each continent, so that they're very aware of their world. And it's beautiful. So here, I just wanted to share with you something that I created actually when I was in the classroom, because we have the children for 3 years, and the way that we were given these lists of activities was a bit much for me. So I created this I would print one out for each child so that I could follow along their progress. And as you can see, and you will get this with the recording, because I don't know if you're watching on a big screen or a phone or whatever, but you can see there's different colors, and those are the 4 areas that I mentioned. The practical life in the green, the sensorial in the orange, the language in the purple, and the mathematics in the blue. So here it's really about seeing this progression of activities, but also the parallel in the activities, that a child, a 3-year-old child here can be doing practical life and sensorial and language all at the same time. So really beautiful. And that is really the progression of the activities from the moment they walk into the classroom until they leave. And I would avoid concerning yourself with the actual age, because to me, every child has their own timeline. They will all progress through these at their own pace, and they will get through all of them, but at their own time. And so the ages are really kind of more or less what you would want to. Um, okay, so now let's talk about your home, how you can really encourage all of these things that we know our children are capable of. So this is not, you know, like we said in the announcements, this is not about homeschooling or, you know, wanting to do Montessori homeschool. There are plenty of people who are doing Montessori homeschool, and that would be, you know, a whole other workshop. This is really about just understanding the principles of Montessori and how to apply them in your home, whether your child goes to a Montessori school or not. Like these are just universal things that we can be doing with our children at home, right? So a Montessori home encourages this idea of safe exploration. And so here I always like to say, that this is temporary. Like the way that you need to modify your home is temporary. They will not be 3-year-olds forever, right? They evolve, just like they're not going to be toddlers forever or infants. So the way that we prepare our environment is temporary in time. So for me here, it's about making sure that you have what we call a yes environment. And this is helpful to you because I don't want you to be stressed and always worried that they're going to touch something or, you know, get in trouble somewhere. So be mindful, sit on the floor. You know, for babies, I say crawl around your home. So here it's just sitting down on the floor and seeing the environment from their perspective and making sure that it is safe for them to explore because this is their home too, right? Making sure that there is room for movement, that, you know, as I said, children are in perpetual movement, so they need to be able to move. So if you know, if you have a yard they can go out, great. If you don't, you know, maybe make sure that they can take all the pillows off the couch and climb and things like that, making it so that it's available to them if need be. Then concentration. And concentration, remember how I said the uninterrupted work cycle was all about this notion of really respecting concentration. So at home, it's really being mindful that when your child is engaged in an activity, whether you understand it or not, to not interrupt them. So, and this might be even if they're making a bit of a mess, like it's okay, take a deep breath and just wait until they come out of their flow. And when you're observing, you will actually notice that they kind of come out and reappear and you can see the light bulb go off in their mind. There you can say, oh my gosh, you really discovered something and there's water on the floor. How you know, can I help you? How are you going to clean it up? So really not interrupting them, you know, of course, unless they might be hurting themselves or somebody else or damaging something. But as much as possible, try to refrain from interrupting their flow and their concentration. And this is, you know, good advice for the preschooler, but it's also advice for the infant, for the toddler, for the adolescent. It's just respecting each other's flow and concentration. The other thing that the home must encourage is independence. A child, especially a preschooler, has become independent, has become more and more independent. They want to be able to do things for themselves. So how can we set up the home for them to have access to what they need, to be able to take care of themselves, to be able to participate in the home and such. Self-discipline is part of the child's need to, once the child is able to concentrate, once the child is able to have movement and all this, they kind of, self-discipline just really comes naturally. They have this notion of self-regulating. Remember how I said they're developing their will? So this is really about, it's the home is giving them feedback for them to have that self-discipline. Communication is essential in a home. It's essential for any healthy relationship. So, and I'll talk more about this, but the home really encourages these flourishing communicators, and their verbal skills are getting better and better. So they're being refined. So really you want to encourage that as much as possible. Order is still very important in the home for the preschooler. And this is very personal. And I know some of the families that I work with, they tell me, oh, but I'm so messy, I'm not at all organized. All I'm asking is that you be somewhat intentional, at least of their space or their area, because it is important to them. They are still in that absorbent mind where they're still classifying and making sense of their world. So if we can have a visual order, brings internal order. It really is important for the construction of their personality, of really the foundation. So keeping things to a minimal, simple, orderly as much as possible is really essential for them. And then of course, love and acceptance for who they are, what they like to do, their quirkiness and all of that. Just love them up. So independence and curiosity at home. Independence can look as simple as making one's bed. Is their bed, easily accessible so that they can fluff up pillows and fold up a blanket, making it as easy as possible for them. Dressing themselves. So here again, I like to simplify things so that they don't have, maybe access to all of their clothes, but just a few selection, so that the choice is not overwhelming, so that you don't have to be monitoring things where, I always say, like, if you tell a child, you open up the closet and you tell a child, what would you like to wear today? You can be 100% sure that they will choose the one thing you really did not want them to wear. So be mindful in kind of organizing it so that they do have a choice, and it's going to be a good choice for whether, the weather, the occasion, whatever it might be that day. Personal hygiene, their bedroom, the bathroom, all of this needs to be well organized for them to be able to independently wash their face, brush their hair, brush their teeth, all of these things. So again, these are skills that they need time to practice, but we're creating an environment where they can practice, and they will get better and better at it, right? Cooking. So you will notice that on most every slide I have cooking. Cooking is very important to me. So cooking, very, very important to organize your kitchen so that they have access to things independently. At this age, they can prepare a snack on their own, as long as there's maybe a space in the refrigerator that they know those are the foods that they have access to, that there's quality child-sized tools that they have access to. And I say quality, for me, it's very important because you want them to be successful. So no pretend or, plasticky things that don't cut, because then they're going to get frustrated and not be able to do things for themselves. Folding clothes, sorting clothes, ironing. Ironing is a beautiful activity that the preschooler loves to do. I remember my son just loving we use cloth napkins, and he would iron all the cloth napkins, and it's a magical thing to teach them and show them all of that. Of course, always with safety and such, but all of these activities that they've been watching us do, they are eager to know how to do them for themselves. So I really encourage you. Gardening, if you have space, even if you have just potted plants, involve them. They love it. They are they're born, you know, nature lovers, and so it's a wonderful way to encourage that, to watch the seeds, to plant, to take good care of them. It gives them a real responsibility. I also didn't put here, but if you have pets, to be taking care of the pets is a wonderful way to encourage that independence as well. Sewing also is beautiful activities. There's a whole progression that you can do, and that's actually a wonderful life skill to have, to be able to, you know, sew a button back on a piece of clothing is an important skill. So then when I talk about, you know, skills, we're really building on skills. Remember how we said that we are refining and we're kind of building on the skills that they previously learned. So for those of you who can see the photos, I have the lock and key with, it's a key that is attached to the lock on a ribbon. So that's usually is an activity that will be wonderful for a toddler, because everything is together. It's really about, you know, just figuring out how to open and close the lock. Later on, you're building on that skill. In the next photo, you have an array of different locks with the different keys. So we have to figure out which key matches with which lock. Becomes a little bit more complex. So it's really this idea of taking them on this road from simple to complex. Just like, you know, peeling garlic. First, it was just peeling. It was just, you know, figuring that out. Then you can have, you know, be chopping garlic and things like that. So it's just building up on the skills. Don't expect a child to know something right off the bat, right? We need to help them have that progression. And then, of course, I have a photo of a young girl student that was actually in my classroom. The way I had it set up, and this is a wonderful way to do at home, is having one of those little ironing boards that can be put on a table, so you can you know, put it at their level, or a regular ironing table. There's some that come up and down quite easily. And the iron is actually a travel iron, so they're much smaller. And you can have an electrician fix it so it never goes to the very hot. And, you know, again, beautiful activities, simple activities to do at home that you're probably already doing, and that they've been watching you, and they're more than eager and willing to do it. And I will say this because we tend to think, oh, but no, they're too young for this. But when they're showing interest, then follow them. Because don't wait until, you know, you have a young adolescent at home and you want to show them how to iron or help you do the dishes or the cooking, because they're not going to be all that interested. So really follow their lead. When they show that eagerness to know and to learn, that's your opportunity to show them those steps. Communication and literacy at home. So here, for me, and I know some of the listeners on the call, and we had some questions previously about bilingual household or multilingual household. For me here, this is your home. Please speak your native tongue. Please speak the language that you are most comfortable speaking, so that you are enriching your child's brain connections and you are enriching their language. It is said that we can learn a language as a native speaker with great ease before 12 years of age. So for me, this is your opportunity to share with them your language. So if it's you or if it's another family member, try as much as possible to be very consistent, so that when you are one-on-one with the child, that is the language that you speak. Oftentimes in a multi-language household, there will be a common language that everybody speaks, and that's fine. But when you are one-to-one, speak that language. So for example, for us, we speak French in our home. My husband is French. I was raised in both countries. So that's how we raised our children. In our home, as much as possible, we would speak only French because that's also the common language with my husband. Outside in the world, they speak English. So they're now bilingual. That's how I was raised. I actually speak both languages perfectly fine with no accent. So please, and it will not confuse them, because I hear a lot of, parents asking me, but is it going to confuse them? No, it's not. If you are consistent and this is the language that they speak with you, please do so. Also, when I say use proper language, and this is, also for the younger child, is this notion that we tend to kind of want to do this baby talk with them, or the way that they pronounce something is so cute, so we're going to repeat that back to them. Actually, what you want to do is repeat back to them the proper pronunciation of words. Really, if you want to take note on the cuteness of the way that they speak, or the way that they pronounce something, take a note of it, make a recording of it, but you need to be responding back to them with the proper pronunciation without correction. Just say, oh, are you saying, like for example, Wawa. Oh, are you wanting some water? So, this is a little bit of for the younger preschooler, but they are refining the language. So as much as possible, give them proper language. When they point at a tree, yes, that is a tree, but if you know the actual name of that species of tree, give them that proper vocabulary. Give them as much rich, beautiful vocabulary as you possibly can. Sing away. Make up songs, sing. They love your voice. It's a wonderful way to build the auditory sense, to express oneself. Very, very important. Read, model reading for yourself, read to them, read together, and read together for as long as they want you to read together. There is no, oh, you're too old for this. Some children love to be read to. To this day, I love to read out loud. So, it's you, as long as your child likes you to read and asks you to read, please, engage them for sure. Listen to their stories. They have a lot to say. And remember that the way language develops is a desire to communicate. And the desire really comes from being heard, from somebody making you feel like what you have to say is important. Sometimes we don't always understand what they're telling us, or they've got, funny stories or whatever, and just still listen and be attentive and try to, be the active listener and say, oh, are you telling me that this happened? And really have that dialogue. Very important. Also share stories. Oftentimes I have parents telling me, and kind of out of frustration, I picked up my child at school and I asked them what they did for the day, and they said, nothing, I played, or, but are you modeling, telling them what you did? So maybe start that way. Say, oh, today I met this very funny man and he had a red hat and he made me laugh, or I got really upset because somebody, cut me off. You tell your stories, and it will encourage them to tell their stories. Because remember, the child is still very much in the present moment. So when you ask them, what did you do today? They're like, I don't know, I'm right here with you, right? So if you want that dialogue, you initiate it and you model it. And then poetry, like expose them to the beauty of your language. To reading poetry, rhymes, having the refinement of that, the beauty of our language, of how we can express ourselves. And that to me, that it's beautiful. I just discovered, and actually it's on my podcast, a woman who does poetry and tea time with her children, just having tea and reading poetry. And it's beautiful because it really, again, engages our creativity and language and such. And then one thing that you can do at home too, to have, once you have a child who is interested in the symbols of our language and such, is what I was sharing in the classroom, is this idea of the phonetic game or I spy game. And there it's really about, oh, I spy something that starts with the sound B. B. Do you see something that starts with the sound B? And it's just, again, it's giving them this awareness of sounds and that everything has a letter sound to it. So B, B, they might see their bear, or, you know, they might see a bench or things like that. And you can do the beginning sound, the end sound, the middle sound. It's a beautiful game to be playing with them. So that is how we encourage communication and literacy at home. Also very important is to know that we all have a mathematical mind, meaning that, you know, we're all right now, even all of us on the call, we're probably wondering, like, how long is Jeanne-Marie's presentation going to go? Is she taking this much time? What time is it? You know, thinking of the distances, the time, all that. That's our mathematical mind. So we're all born with a mathematical mind. So it's important to nurture our children's. And here, use math language. Use language of, oh, I wonder how many we need, or how much, you know, how much flour do we need for our cake? How many spoons do we need to set the table? So you're kind of using mathematical language. And this is, you know, like I say, no need to test. Like, we're not testing them. We're just giving them the opportunity and using language. And asking for quantity. So as I was saying in the classroom, you know, some of the concrete material, they feel in their hands what it feels like. You can do the same thing at home with spoons or things, and have them hold what it feels like to hold 8 spoons as opposed to 1 spoon, and things like that. So this is, again, an awareness of quantity and using their mathematical mind. Again, cooking, measuring, all of that is going to be part of the mathematical mind. Sewing, measuring fabric, patterns, all of that, that is math. Woodwork, all of that is using that mathematical mind. So all of these are things that you can definitely do at home. Then sensorial, geography, music, and art. I kind of put it all together because to me here, it's really about giving them opportunities and sharing life with them. You know, it makes me sad when parents tell me that, you know, they're not doing anything anymore since they've been parents because they think they need to just stay at home and such. I really encourage you to travel with your children, explore, go to museums, galleries, do things that you're passionate about. You know, don't take away your passions, like share your passions with them is really important. So, and then also let them be bored, because boredom is actually where creativity and imagination is birthed. So don't feel like you constantly need to entertain your children. It's you know, just life. Like, do life with them, alongside with them, involve them, take them out in nature, a lot of nature, as much as you can, going on hikes in the woods, to the ocean, to the beach, as much, so that we are helping them be connected to nature is very important. You know, concerts, of course, concerts with, you know, at the beginning with protection, maybe earplugs, things like that. is important, but definitely sharing your music. Like, you don't have to only listen to children's music. Like, listen to music you enjoy, and help them hear what the different instruments are, the different types of music. They have a great memory. They will know what jazz and classical and samba and all of this is if they are exposed to it. Okay? And then again, cooking together, because cooking is where it all happens. So learning happens in the kitchen. For me, cooking, the kitchen, making them really have access to the kitchen so that they can do things independently is really important. So, have a step stool that is safe for them to get up to the counter, unless you have space to have a low table for them. Here in this photo, it's what we call a learning tower. People call it different things, but it's really to be able to have independent access, and it's safe. Have your things organized for them so that they have easy access in a low drawer or in a cupboard that's dedicated to them. Have them help out. For me, really important to have, like I said, good quality utensils, and I find them everywhere, like in what we call dollar stores or discount stores or cooking stores. There's always like these miniature utensils that are actually made for adults but are wonderful for children. So be on the lookout for quality material for them. And then just, involve them, because there's just so much happening in the kitchen, where it's not only independence, but it's this sense of having responsibility, of having what we call significance and belonging. We have all of our senses, tactile and smell and olfactory. We can do geography. Where does this spice come from? Oh, what country, and all of this. So there's so much exploration to be done just by cooking together. So I invite you to take a little break. Yes? How am I doing on time, Simone?
So we're actually nearing the hour-and-a-half mark.
Oh my goodness.
It flies when you're having fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the chat, and we'll just take a couple of questions on all of the Montessori things. If anyone has any questions, feel free. I've opened up the chat box now. If there's something that Jean-Marie said that you're not sure about, we're coming up to now the questions on discipline. How do I get my child to do that? Get cooperation, those kind of things. So save those kind of questions for the second part. But if you do have any questions that come up, there's a couple of things that I thought were really fun and thought we should note, is that when you said 2.5, sometimes for a preschooler, you may actually see these signs of a preschooler starting a little bit before the 3-year mark. And you may find that they're still transitioning from a toddler around 3.5. So yes, some parts will be active, some parts won't be quite finalized. They'll be moving from acquisition to refinement within that whole year. But just to
definitely,
might be interesting as well. Also, I loved in the sequence chart how you can see how one skill builds on another. It's so natural, where I think if you're learning how to play rugby, they don't give you the lesson first how you run, then how you throw, then how you they just kind of give you a lesson on whatever you want on the same day. And I just wish that everything was made in such a systematic way so that children can learn. I'm wondering if the chat box is working, because no one's piping in there, but that's okay. If you don't have any questions, it's also fine. Oh, here comes some now. And another thing I thought that was really good to know, which I'll include in the show notes, is the book by Amy Fagan about sewing. It has the whole sequence of sewing activities that parents could do at home, Montessori activities. Because there's a lot of what you were talking about. We don't want to have the language, movable alphabet in our house. You talked about the ice bag games that we could play and all those kind of things. But things like sewing, cooking, all those things can easily be transferred. And I loved all the ideas that we can do at home. Okay, so they're all coming in now. That will keep you more than going for a while. Let's start with Stephanie. She asks, how do you integrate these concepts for an older preschooler with whom you have missed some sensitive periods, for example, practical life, self-care, and even toileting?
So start where they are. You know, for me, it's never too late. It's not, you know, this notion. And sometimes I feel bad that we know about sensitive periods because it's true. Parents always think, "Oh my gosh, I missed it." There's never like, it might be a little bit harder because the sensitive period is basically a moment in time when children are just so focused on learning something. And it's true that sometimes if we miss that window, it's just going to take a little bit more maybe work on our part, or just a little bit more time, but it's never too late. So it's just start wherever they are at, and like everything else, you build up on the skills. So see where it is the skill that needs to be worked on, and then built up on it.
Yeah, it's a bit like learning Dutch. It's going to be more effort, but it's definitely possible, right? It's just that we missed that little window.
Exactly.
Okay, great. I'm sure she'll find that very useful. Khadija says, I run a Montessori in Pakistan, so I see kids who just throw materials in a classroom age 2.5. So how to help them?
So this is actually you know, a difficult time, and I remember I had the same thing when we have kind of the older toddler coming into the 3 to 6 classroom, where the ratio is different. There, you know, there's 1 adult to 12 children, things like that. So it becomes different. For me, what I did is I actually seeked out an assistant for my primary classroom who was birth to 3 trained. So she knew the toddlers a bit more and knew how to engage them. But it's just going to take time and repetition, and just, you know, in this environment, you can throw the balls outside. In here, this is, you know, remind them what the material is used for. You might need to be repeating lessons more and more, and repeating just the grace and courtesy lessons over and over again. And that's, grace and courtesy is part of it, is, you know, how we use the material, how we put it away, how we carry it, all of that.
Yeah, and I love how there's also mixed age groups. So you can also really focus on the older children, and then they're modeling even more for those younger 2.5-year-olds who are still getting.
Yes, and that's a great point. Like, use your older children. They are amazing helpers, where they really will, you know, take the little ones aside and show them, and it's, use them as your helpers for sure.
Okay, there's a question from Elizabeth, and she says, can you comment on screen time for preschooler kids?
So I didn't want to get too much into screen time, because to me, I feel that's almost another workshop. I do have later on my slide to try to limit it as much as possible. And this is my very, you know, personal opinion. I do not think or believe that children before 10 years of age need any type of screen. So this is going to be about your personal family values and how you want to implement that. Screen time can be extremely addictive. So, you know, I know at the time of this recording, we are in a time of a global pandemic. A lot of us have been self-isolating, and we are confined to our homes. So we've kind of, you know, gone to using screens. There's a lot of schools who are actually teaching using screens. So you know, it is kind of a different time and place. But I really believe that with all of the activities that I shared, and letting your child just be bored and not having anything to do and not needing to entertain them, you don't really need screen time. You know, oftentimes I see people say, oh, you know, I just put on a movie so I could get cooking done. Well, let's reframe that, and how can I involve my child in the cooking that needs to be done? So that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and then Fern says, thank you, I've got some great new activity ideas to do with my grandies. She presented the last workshop on toileting, so it's fun that she's
wonderful, wonderful.
Ruchi asks, is it good to have a timetable for the preschoolers at home?
A timetable. If they are in a Montessori school, no, because they have it at school. So I'm pretty adamant about if your child is in a, in a community where they're leaving the home and they're learning other things outside of the home, we don't need to bring those things into the home. I really like to respect their workspace. I know I remember I had a family whose little boy was doing wonderful math work in my classroom. They wanted to have all of the same material at home. And I was really adamant about no, because he's excited to come to school to be able to do these. So, the math tables and multiplication tables takes a lot of sequences to get there. So unless they have shown like this avid, need for numbers and things, there's really no need. There are plenty of board games you can play. There's plenty of things that you can do just, out in nature in your home to understand what the idea of multiplication is, but to kind of have this rote, memory and learning, to me personally, I don't think it's necessary, especially if they have access to that in their classroom.
Great. And there's so many that have come in, but let's take two last ones and then we'll move into your second section
Okay.
of the discipline and things.
Okay.
So excellent talk, thank you. Big note to self, not to interrupt my girls even when they're making a massive mess. They will be happy. My question would be about resources to have at home. Simone's book gave items for toddlers and I'm not sure what I can get for my 5-year-old. So now I'm wondering, Patrick, which resources you'd want, but maybe could you pick, say, 3 or 4 things that would be essential items, particularly on a budget, that people could include at home, what you actually would buy?
So good cooking utensils.
But not, yeah, okay, good cooking utensils. Okay, so and you find them at cooking stores and things like that, right?
Yes, good cooking utensils, books, wonderful books. As much as books based in reality, with lots of geography, things like that, an atlas. Tools, good woodworking tools, good sewing tools, just really equipping them with quality tools for a lot of the practical life. And then it's really about following their lead in what they're showing interest in. So if you have a child who's suddenly, very intrigued with the worms that they are finding in the garden, well, go to the library and find some more books on worms so that we can learn more about them, or puzzles of worms, things like that. It's really about following their lead and their interest is really what I would do. And the question, is hard, because if you are like homeschooling, there's definitely some, foundational material that you can get for the math and the language. But here I'm not talking about homeschooling. I'm talking about children who, are in maybe even traditional environments or Montessori environments. And this is really about you making a home that encourages learning, that encourages curiosity, and that encourages building on skills and on independence.
Yeah, great. And so our last one before we head on to the second section is I have a Montessori type materials in our home, and when I ask my daughter what she would like to do, she almost always prefers that we play with her dolls and stuffies. Is doing so an educational activity?
So we could so here again, it's hard to know if you are a homeschooler and why you have Montessori material at home.
Montessori type materials, like I think the activities you're talking about.
Okay, so if for me, I mean, playing with your dolls and pretend playing, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's part of communication and imagination and all of this. You can definitely maybe involve the dolls in an activity. Maybe have the doll sit next to her and show the doll how to peel an egg and slice an egg, or bake a cake, or things like that, if that is something. Like for me, it's about using their interest into kind of leading them to another thing that you feel would benefit them, and be curious. And and I will just say something about that in the actual environment is, I know that some parents worry that if their child is just so into numbers and so into the math material, will they ever read? Will they ever write? And that's what we're trained to do, is to kind of take the interest that they have maybe in mathematics and maybe write out word problems. Then they have to read, right? So it's always like finding a way to connect something else to what they are fascinated with now. So with a doll, there's maybe we could sew something for the doll, or there's ways of involving her in other activities via the dolls.
Great. Well, thanks, Jean-Marie. I'm going to mute myself again and let you take over with the second section of the presentation. And everyone wants more questions, so we'll hang in there as long as we can, and how long we can keep Jean-Marie going.
Yes, and bear with me, because I'm sorry I kind of went over time. I get a little passionate about what I'm sharing, but now is kind of the positive discipline aspect of what we can do at home. Okay, so here, this is really important to know, is that positive discipline. So what I'm basing a lot of this on is from Adlerian psychology, and Alfred Adler and Rudolf Dreikes. And it's really this understanding that we all of us on the call, all of us on the planet, we all need significance and belonging. And that a misbehaving child is really a child who is discouraged. It's a child who is not feeling that sense of significance and belonging. And so if you can have that always in the back of your mind when your child is having a hard time, because remember, they're not giving you a hard time, they are having a hard time, is just we need to see and be kind of their translator and try to figure out what is discouraging them. Okay? Whoops. I need to be back on my, okay. So this is a beautiful quote also from Dr. Maria Montessori about the discipline, and how discipline is not about telling you what to do, but really comes from being a disciple, of really learning and teaching. So again, we are our children's guides. We are guiding them in knowing what is appropriate, what is, the cultural etiquette and such. And so it's really also helping them have that inner discipline, that self-discipline. And that's why I mentioned in the home, that's what we want to encourage, is that really inner discipline. So here I want to take a moment to ask you to really consider, what is your parenting style? So here we can either be very kind or not so kind, even kind of mean and grumpy, right? Or we can be really laissez-faire, no firmness whatsoever, or extremely firm, meaning very strict. And this is important to know, that I think in parenting, we're always doing a dance on all of these different quadrants. But here, is seeing where you stand. So if you are extremely kind and have no firmness, then you're a permissive parent, and it's really freedom without boundaries. If you are both, so then you can have also the person who is has no firmness and no kindness. And that's really kind of the uninvolved, almost neglectful parent, which I doubt any of you on this call are, but it's really the parent who just, is kind of neglectful and uninvolved. Or you can be not so kind and be very firm, very strict. So that would be the authoritarian parent, which is boundaries without freedom. And both the permissive and the authoritarian parent can be quite confusing for the child, especially the permissive one where children need boundaries, need to have kind of a structured way to be able to navigate in. Otherwise, it's overwhelming and confusing for them. And so here, what I invite you to really be considering is to being in the quadrant that is both kindness and firmness. And this is really the authoritative parent who is really giving them freedom within boundaries. So it's really that freedom within limits. You are the parent. You are the one that sets the groundwork and the boundaries for your child to develop freely inside of those boundaries. And don't be afraid to set those boundaries. You're the adult in the room, right? I feel that oftentimes parents are almost afraid to say no. If you're saying no with loving kindness, because it's important that they follow a certain rule, such as, I don't know, for me, it was, holding my hand or a piece of clothing when we were in the parking lot, for example, or walking beside me, when they didn't want to hold my hand anymore. Those are very important boundaries that I gave with loving kindness. So that's what positive discipline is all about, is being in this quadrant of being the authoritative parent, of having firmness and kindness at the same time. Kindness because you respect your child, and firmness because you respect yourself and the situation at hand. So, some criteria to be considering when we are wanting to discipline in a positive way. And these are the criteria of positive discipline. So first of all, like we just discovered, is it kind and firm at the same time? Like, are we really being, in balancing the two? Does it help your child feel a sense of belonging and significance? Because there we will often feel, if for example, like cooking, let me go back to the cooking. If a child, you're trying to get dinner ready, a child comes in, wants to be there, is kind of, in your way, do you say, go find something else to play with, I'm fixing dinner? Or do you try to bring them in and give them just a little piece of the puzzle? So you might even give them a task in the kitchen that has nothing to do with what you're doing right then and there, but you're involving them. You're giving them that significance and belonging. So that's something to be thinking about. The other thing to be always thinking about is it effective long-term? And this comes from really knowing what your values are. What do you hope to see in your child, 20 years down the road? Do you want these children, these young adults to be kind, to be generous, to be funny, to be, to have a good sense of self, all of that? So that is when you are in the midst of a situation that you're disciplining, is it going to give them the skills to become that young adult? So really always thinking of long term. I do an exercise when I do positive discipline workshops where we make a list of all of the challenges that we're having with our children. And I've done this for over a decade, all over the world. The challenges are the same all over the globe, let me reassure you. And then we do a list of all of the life skills that we would want our children to have. And those, again, are the same all over the globe. Is we want them to have, a good sense of self, to be independent, to be confident, to be kind and generous, and all of this. And so this is, to me, I always do this for you to have a roadmap, to know where you're taking your child to, right? So that's why it's really important to be thinking, is it effective long-term? And again, is it teaching those social and life skills that you hope for them to have in the future? And most importantly, does it invite your child to find solutions? Because children are beyond smart and beyond, thinking and all of this. And when we take the time to invite them to share what their solutions to an issue is, you will be, blown away by how thoughtful those solutions might be. And some of them might be a little, out there. If you can, if you're willing, if it's not dangerous, I would invite you to go along with their solutions if it's going to resolve an issue that's going on. So here I had a little exercise I wanted everybody to do with me, if you can, if those of you who can see me. Let's take a pause together, take a nice deep breath. Okay, wait, I'm gonna put my screen so I can see everybody here. Let me see, gallery view. Can I see everybody here? Okay, so take a nice deep breath. If you have one hand available at least, take a deep breath, and with your hand, I want you to do a little okay sign. All righty, everybody's got their okay sign. And now I would like you to place your okay sign on your chin. I said chin. Ha ha, I got you all. I said chin. Okay, perfect. So that is an example of what we need to be modeling our children. We tend to tell them what to do constantly, but we're not necessarily doing it ourselves. So our children learn from us doing, not from saying. And this is why this is so beautiful. And I promise you, you can do this at any, when we can have dinner parties or be out or parties, do this. It gets people every time because we're watching each other. This is part of our mirror neurons. We're watching what we're doing. So I said chin, but that's not what I did. But most of you put your, the okay sign on your cheek. So do as I say is a beautiful reminder for ourselves to model to our children what we want to see in them. Okay. Oops. All right. So another thing to be very vigilant about is this idea that we need to kind of be a translator of what is going on with our children's behavior. And this is this notion that the behavior is the top of the iceberg, right? And what the child believes about themselves is everything that is below the water. So it's really the belief below the behavior. In positive discipline, they say belief behind the behavior, but I thought with this visual below made more sense for me. So this, though, to be a detective is first and foremost, how does it make you feel? The situation that you're in. Does it make you feel annoyed, or maybe challenged or threatened, or maybe hurt or disappointed, or maybe feeling this sense of hopelessness, right? So these are all keys for us to kind of tap in how it's making us feel. And oftentimes with a behavior, we're going to kind of react, and we're going to maybe push harder for something. So let's take, for example, attention. Okay, I'm going to give you an example on attention. So your child is really kind of irritating you. You're being annoyed, and you keep on really reminding the child, to, let's say, put on their shoes. Come on, let's go. We need to, put on your shoes, and you get so frustrated that you end up doing it for them, right? And I'm sure I'm not the only one in this situation. There's a lot of us, we need to have ourselves in check. So this might help the child feel, stop temporarily and resolve the situation at hand for the moment. But the belief below that behavior is really feeling that I can only count or belong when I'm being noticed, right? So it's really this idea that they just have this goal of just wanting attention. That's all. So if we can detect that ahead of time, then we can respond in a different way, because all they're saying to us is notice me, involve me. So here it can be, would you like me to loosen the shoelaces for you? Do you want me to help you with the right foot and you do the left foot? So be there with them. Children are just, I think, always giving us messages of they just want a little bit more connection, right? So if we can take a deep breath, take a pause, and be there for them, will really help. And this can sound like, I love you, and I know you know how to put your shoes on, and I'm here to help you. That's it. You're not shaming them for not putting on their shoes that day, because that day is just a day they don't feel like it. Just like we have days we don't really feel like doing things, right? And just for me, it's a reminder too that sometimes we tend to put our children kind of at a higher, how do you say, like have higher expectations of them than sometimes, ourselves, where for example, I love to cook, and I, cook dinner most every night, but some nights I really don't feel like it or don't want to. That doesn't mean that, I'm bad or we need to give up on me. It's just there's days and moods. So being respectful of that basically is what I'm saying. And really, if for a child, for example, who has this belief that, they only matter if they make a ruckus and have this undue attention, there would be probably important to plan special time with them, to let them know that, on Thursday we have a special date together, and we're going to get to, go to that museum or that park that you've been wanting to go to. So really always having them have a time that they know they can look forward to. So I know this is kind of a harder concept to get, but it's this idea of really looking inward first of what are our own triggers, and that often is going to help us decipher what it is our child's belief about themselves is, so that we can help them through a situation. And the four, beliefs, or what we call mistaken goals, are this need for attention, power, or revenge, or sometimes feeling inadequate. So here it's going to be really giving them little steps and helping them along. And learn, and from that, we're always, as parents, we're constantly learning to, respond in a more positive way, and just practice, like, and be kind to yourself. Like, there's some days we don't get it right, and that's okay. And part of, being a parent and a respectful parent is also learning from our own mistakes and being able to tell our child, I didn't really like the way I responded, and I'm going to try to do better next time. And how can we help each other so this, doesn't happen? Or how can we work together so that we can find solutions together so these types of situations don't happen? So one of the positive discipline tool that I really, really like, and that I know worked wonderful for myself and my home, is this idea of creating routines together. So this is not about going out and buying a routine chart and having stickers and something that's already pre-made or something that you decide is important. But this is really about working together with your child. And I will share a very simple situation. And this was with one of my children, was the routine in the morning of getting out of the house on time was horrendous. I was reminding him all the time what he needed to do, that we were going to be late. I would get in my car fuming and I was upset and go off to work upset. He was probably going off to school upset and such. And so this, for the routine, is really about coming together and saying, I've noticed that we've been struggling in the morning and we're kind of leaving the house kind of upset. And that's not really a great way to start the day. So let's figure out how we can solve this together. And here it's really about, again, really, I have to emphasize doing it together. And it's really about brainstorming together all of the different things that need to happen before, for example, going off to school. For me, it was, being dressed, being clean, being fed, and having a smile on our face. And whoops. And so we brainstorm of all of the different things that needed to happen. And here it's really about, helping each other think of all the different things. And if there's a silly thing in there about, doing 10 jumping jacks, that's fine. This is their routine, and write it on, just really brainstorm, and then be creative about how you are going to have a visual of this routine. So it could be taking photos of them actually doing the activities. It could be drawing them. If a child is reading, it could be simple words of reminders. And so this is really about giving them that being able to take ownership of their routine. And it helps you not having to remind and nag, and gives you the opportunity to do your own routine. So you don't have to be doing both at the same time. And so there you can always just say, oh wow, okay, you've got your underwear on. What's next? Like, go check. And you're kind of giving over the control to the routine. The routine is doing the work for you. So that is one tool that I really love and encourage you to try out for those moments in the day that are difficult. Just choose one. Don't do routines for every aspect of. Choose that one moment that is challenging, that you would want a little bit more structure, and be creative in how you visualize it. And then the other thing that is for me really important, as we saw in the whole, when I was showing the sequences of Montessori, is just give them time to learn new skills. Like, don't expect children to just know how to do things. We need to take time for training. So, explain and show age-appropriate tasks. Do it together. Observe them doing it. Learn from where there might be a difficulty, and then give them the opportunity to practice over and over again. And also, to just really practice. And the acronym that I like to use is SHOW. And really, this is SHOW, but SHOW means slow hands. So when you're showing an activity to a child, really be intentional about slowing your movements, because they're watching the movements. So try to slow motion, and then omit words, meaning that we tend to over explain and we just blah blah blah, and we want to talk over everything, and that actually takes away their concentration from what we're showing them how to do something. So really try as much as possible when you are showing a new activity or any activity, try to slow your movements and then stop talking. And you will see that they will be able to pick things up a lot better. So remembering that show. So the other tool, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rushing a little bit, but because I kind of went over on the Montessori aspect, I want to get through these slides for you. The other idea about living with young children, and this is, you know, living with anybody really, but since we are talking about our preschoolers, is this idea of having a safe place to really assess our emotions and to be able to regulate our emotions. So in positive discipline, we call this a positive timeout. So this is not about using timeout as a punitive punishment, as, you know, still to this day, I have a lot of families that I work with, you know, telling me, well, I put them in timeout and it didn't work because there's a piece missing. And so here it's about really having a preventative notion of, you know, the behavior. So here what I invite you to do is, again, this is something that you're going to do in partnership with your child. You're not going to take this task upon yourself. You're going to create this together, meaning that you have a child who maybe it is in a home where there are siblings, and you have a younger child who maybe, you know, keeps on taking something from their older brother or sister, and older brother and sister get really upset and start screaming or hitting or throwing something. So you can sense that, you know, it's an emotion that they're feeling that's getting kind of control. So here, what I would suggest is, again, this is at a time when we're calm, we're rested, we're well fed, and have a conversation of, I've noticed that when your little sister comes over and, you know, takes one of the Legos, you get really upset. And I understand that can be really frustrating. You've been working really hard on that. And I really want you to think about what it feels like in your body. So really giving them this awareness of how intelligent our body is and the signs that our body is giving us. Just, you know, like you and I, when we're about to do something scary or something that we might be a little nervous about, we might feel, you know, a pit in our stomach, get sweaty hands, whatever. Our body is reacting to an emotion. So if we can help our children have this self-awareness, and so here we're asking a child to be aware of where they feel it in their body, and that when they have this feeling, let's have a place we can go to calm ourselves. What would you like to have in that place? Would your teddy bear help you? Would some, you know, quiet music? Would a candle or a lava lamp or a book or something that is really going to help them calm themselves and come back? Because here, you know, here it's also just understanding that their younger sibling is going to continue doing these things, and that we need to help them kind of have a better control of those emotions. So, and this is really helpful for us to also have a timeout or a positive timeout for ourselves, modeling this for our children so that when we're upset about something, we can tell our child, you know what, I'm having a really hard time now. I'm going to go sit in my quiet chair for a moment and I'll be back. So we're modeling again to them this idea of being aware of how we feel to not let it rise out of control, basically. Okay, so that's the beauty of creating a calming space, a safe space for our children. And then here I wanted to share this idea of what I call language of love. And I would invite all of you listening to this to really think back to your own childhood, maybe when you were 4 or 5 years old, when you were a preschooler, and think back to a person who really made you feel loved and important, who really gave you that sense of significance and belonging. So take a moment, think back of that person. And I know for me, I often think of my 2 grandmothers, my maternal and paternal grandmother. They were both people who took time to teach me something, who took time to listen to my stories. I remember long walks with my paternal grandmother where she would ask me all sorts of questions and such. And I know when I've done this exercise with, other families, and I wish we could open up to it because I would love to hear, what those are. But most people, it's often somebody who just took time, to listen, to share something with them. It rarely has anything to do with material or things they bought or things like that. It's really about connection and time. And that to me is what I call the language of love, is really taking that time to be together and to share a passion, to share a skill with your child. And this is also what we call encouragement. And you see in the word encouragement, there is the word courage. And courage is really that piece of humanity that we all have that makes us do things without really thinking about it. The person who's going to jump in a frozen lake to save an animal or a child or something, when they come out, you say, oh my gosh, how did you do this? Why did you? And they say, I don't know, I just had to. So courage is really, for me, it's the goodness in humanity that we have, right? And so encouragement is really about us helping our little ones or anybody really shine that best self, is really to empower them to be their best selves. And this is also through the language of love, of respect, and positive discipline. So this is my last, I do believe it's my last slide. It's really a lot of reminders about how we can really have a respectful, encouraging atmosphere at home. I don't think I need to run through all of them. You will get all of these slides, but it's really about, all of these different tools that we can have to show respect to these amazing, evolving little humans that we happen to live with and that we are guiding for them to be their best selves. And I think here I can open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Jean-Marie. We've got so much inspiration, and I hope that there's lots of lovely comments coming in that came in already. So a couple of questions that came in before we had to close the last question and answers was about how could you encourage, for example, a 3-year-old to sit down for a meal using these tools?
So how can you encourage a 3-year-old to sit down for a meal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So on the last slide, I actually had one of the things that I had was to make sure that to have meals together as often as possible, because again, we need to be modeling to our children how it is we sit at the table and we use utensils and we have conversation and we eat what's in our plate. So from as early to me as possible, when they are sitting well independently, have one of these beautiful high chairs that comes to your dinner table, not the high chairs where they're kind of on an island by themselves, but really having meals together, family meals together. And you're showing them, you're modeling for them. And it's true that, oh, you stopped sharing. Okay, sorry. I got distracted. The child is going to want to get up and go do things and such. So here it's about using, this language of when you get up from the table, it tells me that you're all done. Are you all done? Should we put all this away? And be very consistent in following through, so that if you are really saying that when we get up, dinner is over, you put everything away. Your child might be, hungry a half an hour later, and there you have to be consistent with loving kindness and, kind and firm, and say, oh yeah, you didn't finish everything, and that's okay. We'll have a nice dinner in a few hours. So that there's really this idea of consistency of when we sit down together for a meal, there's a purpose to it. We're eating together and we're making sure that we're done. And so that would be my thought on that.
And it actually leads in quite nicely, because I'm imagining that then the child's probably not very happy with maybe not your decision. So the next question was, how do you handle discipline during a child's meltdown?
So there, it's really having a lot of compassion. This is a tough time in our lives where we have big emotions, and sometimes we have these big feelings that we don't know what to do with. So that's why I really suggest the positive timeout, and positive timeout, call it what you want, call it your, relax zone, your Zen zone, whatever. It's about like, oh, it looks like you're really upset. Would you like to go cuddle with your bear in your, in your happy zone or whatever? But sometimes it's really about just, sitting with them, just letting them go through it. Like this is just a storm, and it will get through, and you will be amazed of how, if we just show the compassion and empathy when they are having a big emotional moment, that we're letting be okay with it. Like there's nothing bad with having emotions, right? It's we all need a good cry every once in a while, and we all have emotions. So it's just being okay with our emotions and not trying to fix it and let them tell them, oh, it's okay, you're fine, stop crying, whatever. Just acknowledge, like, oh my gosh, you're feeling really upset about this. Would you like a hug? Is there something that would make you feel better? If they're in the moment of it, they probably want nothing to do with you, and they'll, push you away, whatever. And you say, okay, well, I'm right here for you when you need me. And really, that's all we can really do is be with them.
And if they were in the supermarket, do you have any tips?
Sit down on the floor with them.
It's hard.
This is hard for our egos, because we feel like we're being judged by other people. We feel like the person's looking at us, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible parent. No, you're not. You have a human being who is having big emotions, and you just need to help them through. So we can say, I can see you're having a really hard time. Would you like me to pick you up and we can go sit outside for a little bit? Or if you're okay with sitting down in the aisle of the supermarket with them, please do it. Like, don't let other people determine how you are going to empower your child to feel confident with their own emotions.
And so just to clarify, like, so if a child's screaming for ice cream and really upset about it and that kind of thing, you're not saying you have to give them the ice cream. You're just
Oh,
saying help them to
yeah,
process emotions.
yeah.
You may, like, sometimes we can say yes to ice cream, don't get me wrong, but like today you've said no for some reason. And
Right.
what would you do then?
And so this brings up a really good point. And I think that what's most important is to prepare beforehand. So I highly, highly recommend, if you really want to go to the supermarket with your children, which I personally avoided most of the time, like I would find a way to go by myself or send my husband or whatever. But if you do, if you're alone, you know, and you have to, prepare them. Say, you know what, we're going to the supermarket and I have a list and I really would like your help in helping me find the milk and the eggs and the carrots. And that's all we're going to get. And remember that if you ask me for ice cream or candy, I'm going to say no. And you might not like it, and that's okay. But that's how we're going to do. Maybe next time when we go to the store, we can go to the store for ice cream. Like, really prepare them. And the important thing here is you have to follow through. You cannot let the gaze of somebody else that you feel judged go, okay, well, here, let me give you some ice cream so you stop crying, right? You have to follow through. It is about your values and you and your child, first and foremost.
Okay, one of the other questions was about how you encourage independence for a child that says they can't do it. For example, they're not like pulling up their pull-ups or washing their hands and those kind of things.
So this is and this is a great question, because it comes back to, you know, building up on the skills and just showing that encouragement in that faith. And oftentimes a child that you know is very successful at doing something and suddenly they don't want to, that child is really asking for attention. That child is really just asking for connection. And so please just use humor, like just be okay with saying, oh, are you not wanting to you know, put up your pants today? Do you need a little help? And that's it. Like, don't make it into this power struggle of, oh, I know you can do it. Like, just stop being silly. Just put up your pants. No, it's more like, oh my gosh. And you know what? Have fun with it and maybe pretend that you can't put up your socks or something and that you need help. Like, engage, be connected and use humor and offer to say, I can help you. What part is difficult? Like, be okay with having your child just asking for some extra attention, some extra connection. Maybe something has happened in the day. Maybe, you know, there's something going on. Oftentimes when there's a new sibling that's come along, suddenly they revert back to not being able to do anything. It's okay. Like, just remind them that you know that they know how to do it. And I'm also here for you and I can help you.
Great. So back to some of the Montessori things, which activities would you also have on shelves other than practical life activities?
So this is going to be, again, you know, when I talk about activities, you know, I'm because this is not about homeschooling, I guess this is more about involving them more in what you're doing in the home. So I do think that there should be a lot of practical life. The home is not necessarily arranged as much as these individual trays as maybe the toddler needed. This can be really about a drawer that is dedicated to, you know, the cooking utensils, or a cupboard that is dedicated to the arts and crafts. So a lot of art and craft, a lot of, if your child, like I said, you know, is suddenly interested in you know, insects and things like that, some books, maybe some, you know, a loop, like, you have to follow their interest. It's hard for me to tell you, oh, well, you need this, and that. It's more about really following their interests. And that if they are in a school, like if they are leaving the home and learning things elsewhere, just at home have things that are soothing and calming, like sewing or knitting or artwork or reading. Like I really encourage a reading area for your child to be able to, go savor books, woodworking, all of this. But it's true, everything I'm saying is, again, a lot of practical life, because I think that is really what is most important at this age, of really, building the dexterity of the hands, of the sequencing of activities and such. So that's really, where I would go. If you have, like an emergent reader, sure, you could have, little labels to read, things like that. But it's really going to be depending on what your child is showing interest in.
Yeah, but I love that, like, because nature shelves and nature exploration and making seasonal the kind of displays, and that magnifying glass, it's a loupe, a magnifying glass, where you can really look at shelves, those kind of things. So you can definitely then go down the interest. And we're looking often, yes, you said, in realistic things, like it's still at this age, because if you ground the child in reality now, then they have all the world at their fingertips for imagination as they move into what we call the second plane, which is from 6 to 12. Yeah. Really nice. And also, I think what's really fun to note in the art and craft stage of a preschooler versus a toddler is that they don't have to have trays out of like everything at the ready. Oh, look, my drawing trays here and my cutting trays here. They can have IKEA drawers with the scissors always in this spot and the paper in that spot. And my kids would make books and staple them together and then make comic strips, or they love secret kind of languages and then make all these kind of games and things like that. So maybe that gives them some more ideas of what kind of other activities they could include as well. But I definitely agree with you that practical life and art and craft and nature are the biggest things you'd be doing at home.
That and just, also continue having kind of open-ended toys and activities. Like, to me, they continue to want to really play and pretend. So it doesn't have to be, this ideas of rigorous trays. Like I get a little bit, once the child gets older, it's really, like I say, it's really about following what their interest is. And it might be, going outside of the home. It might be, I remember my son actually, his thing was building. And he actually had a hot glue gun. You know what a hot glue gun is? Yeah. And we would go to the big box store and fill up the car with cardboard boxes. And he would hot glue gun them all and build these big structures and then paint them. So that's nothing that I could have on a shelf. That's really just, following his interest, and there would be these great big structures that were painted and there were robots for him, and that was following, and that's math, that's dexterity, that's creativity, that's everything. So yeah, follow their lead.
And one parent asked, how realistic is it to implement Montessori at home and put out activities and materials based on observation if they work full-time?
So the parent works full-time and the child is home with them?
Well, how, in the time that they're together, let's just say.
So, I mean, it's realistic depending on the age of the child. If there has been, ahead of time of, I have my work to do, and we use the terminology work because that is what we do. So it's really about setting the stage ahead of time. I have some work that I need to do. I'm going to sit at my office. I have, a Zoom call. I have whatever. What work would you like to choose while mommy's working or daddy's working? So really setting the stage ahead of time of, what are the choices, and kind of planning ahead of time. Don't expect them because you have to go on a call, like, okay, you got to, you're going to do something. It's really about planning ahead a little bit. So it's almost like I always, kind of equate running a business and running a household kind of the same. So have your little staff meeting, right, with all your staffers, and that includes your child of I have this to do, and when I'm done, we can do this together. So really be able to create that time frame for them, so that they can. But it is realistic if you've been setting the stage and building up the skills on it.
And then also
Definitely.
there are weekends, hopefully, and afternoons and evenings where you might have more time, where you put aside your phone and actually, I'm actually not working now, so that you can
Exactly.
make your then.
Yeah.
And that would also help, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of questions about what Montessori materials to have if your child doesn't go to a Montessori school, or if they're only going 3 days a week. Would you have Montessori?
So there it's kind of hard, because for me, so if they're going to a Montessori school 3 days a week, they don't need, for me, they don't necessarily need more at home. They're getting their material. They're excited to go back to their material. If you see that they're missing it, consider putting them in 5 days a week. Like, this is, it's, again, we're following the child. If they are not in a Montessori school, and really there is no, there is no Montessori material in their classroom, I would be vigilant to confuse them with a different way of learning than what they're being taught. So I would be careful. I know I worked with a family who, for example, her son was going to a Waldorf school, so, different than Montessori, but she was fully Montessori trained, and we created a little Montessori environment at home. And that was different because he only went to Waldorf twice, a day, and she was able to give him lessons at home. So I would be careful to confuse them if they're learning something a different way. And again, here, it might be more of the kind of the sensorial material, maybe. But again, I don't know as if I would, actually. So sorry.
No, that's great. I think that's also good. I've actually opened up the chat box if anyone has any other questions. There are a few more that we're coming in, and I appreciate your time as well. Ruth G says, this is wonderful. I'm just starting to learn more. I'm sorry. You're welcome, Richie. Okay. The name of the sewing book I'm going to look up for you and include in the with the replay, but I want to make sure that I get the right title for you, so I'll include a link to that as well. How could we encourage our child who's 3 years old to go to bed? Our routine: dinner, going to bathroom, reading a book, going to bed and singing a song. And after that, our oldest is always wanting to start to act very loud and switching the lights on and off. And yes, he's tired.
Yeah, and so this is one of those routines where you could very well, what I was sharing about, creating a routine chart together. So really kind of taking pictures of, putting the dishes away and brushing the teeth and getting in pajamas, and so that it's a real kind of sequence. And that once we're done with that last book, then maybe it's, the head on the pillow, like there's no imagery of being loud and jumping and all of that. So that it's just a reminder of what is expected. And then, maybe considering you say, yes, he's tired. There would be a lot more questions to be asked, because sleep is kind of so personal, but is he still getting a nap? Like, is he overtired? Because sometimes children will act up when they're too tired, right? So things like that to consider, but just being very consistent with the routine. And I encourage, like, you can do a routine chart or do a little sleep book. So it's really the story of all the things that we do before we go to sleep. And that will, again, remind you. And it's also a great thing to have if you get, a family member to come and do the bedtime routine or a babysitter. It's already all in a book, and the child knows, and you can hand it off.
Great. And what would you recommend for a 3-year-old who suddenly started wetting the bed at night after having been very good about waking up to use the bathroom?
Unfortunately, I would have to just get up and clean up and do the whole process with him, with no shaming, no like, oh, it looks like you forgot to get up and go to the potty. We need to change the sheets. And I know that sounds tough because it's in the middle of the night, and who wants to, take out the sheets and everything, but do the minimal. And again, this is great thing to remind them before they go to sleep, like to actually use the potty before going to sleep, and reminding them, like, if I come into the room, we'll just need to take off the sheets, okay, and then you can go back to sleep. So really it's just the routine. I would be vigilant as to going back and putting a diaper back on. It might be the answer to, I don't know. I mean, I think this would be a better question for Fern, who did the whole thing on toileting. But it's, sometimes again, it's like what's going on in that child's life that we're getting suddenly this need for attention. There's always something below the surface.
Fern, are you on the call? Do you want to unmute yourself? I don't know if she's on.
I think she left. She gave me a thumbs up, and I think she left.
Okay. And yeah, it could possibly be because of the current situation. They could be being anxious and these things. So again, dealing with some of those things during the day, so that at nighttime maybe it's just knowing that it's a period. Often with the birth of a new baby and all those kind of things, it's not going to last forever. And if we are kind and clear and consistent, my son is 3 and attends a forest school. We'd hoped about attending a Montessori holiday club this year, but can't now. Any suggestions for how to structure a day or week for holiday periods on a budget?
So this is really about brainstorming of, what is accessible to you, where, things that you can do. I'm more about having a rhythm to your day. I'm not sure as if we need to have such scheduled, structure for our young children. It's more about, the morning is we get up, we get ready, we might, lounge around and read some books. And then in the afternoon, we're going to, maybe there's certain days in the week where we go explore a park or go, on a hike, or if there's a special interest. And it's hard because as we're recording this, I know that there's a lot of things that are not accessible to us right now. So, I'm suggesting going to the zoo and things like that. And I know in my town, all of these things are closed right now. So it's kind of hard. But like I say, seeing what you have access to, there is a lot of things that you can do for free. So, on a limited budget, there's so much to just explore, and to take it slow with them. Like, again, it's about following their lead and their interests. So if they're really, interested in fish all of a sudden, like go to a pond where there's fish that we can watch and books that we can get about those types of fish. It's really about having a flow to your day and following their lead.
Yeah, and I think I'll put in the show notes as well, Eloise Rickman's new book called
Yes.
And basically she does homeschooling with her daughter, and she has a lot of information in her book and her blog about daily rhythms, weekly rhythms, and seasonal rhythms. And I think that could be really beautiful in these times when we're kind of working at home and having children and taking more of the care, that it's kind of like a bit of a compromise there.
Yes.
I'll include that in the replay for everyone. What would be a kind and clear boundary for a kid who never cleans up after herself?
Reduce the amount of things that are out. I think oftentimes we tend to expect our children to clean up when there's an overwhelm of toys. So, you know, again, this is depending on the age, but I would really say, you know, I've noticed that you have a hard time putting all these things away. Would you like me to put them away for now? And you put them away, but put them away somewhere else. So it's really limiting the amount of things that need to be put away. You know, it's funny because there was once a training that I did about the same thing happening in the classroom. And the trainer actually suggested that we take everything off the shelf, that there be nothing, and that we just bring back one thing at a time, so that it really gives the children the opportunity to have respect for what they have to play with. And oftentimes I feel that when children do not want to clean up is because there's way too much, like it's overwhelming. So there it's really about, you know, taking that opportunity, but then also saying, I see you're having a hard time. Do you need some help? Would you like me to, you know, help you with the red pieces and you put the blue pieces away? Or, you know, I can put this one away. Which one would you like to put away? So do a collaborative. I would try as much as possible not to do it for them, but I think you need at some point to have an action that you are actually going to follow through and say, you know, I've noticed that you really have a hard time putting this toy away. I think that if I put it away, I'm going to put it away for, you know, for a week or something. So that it really, but you have to follow through. You have to follow through. And that is part of us being firm and kind. You're doing it with loving kindness, but you're just letting them know what is the limit, what is the boundary.
Okay, great. I skipped to one earlier that was from the first set of questions, which is, do you have any activity suggestions for a 3.5-year-old who's interested in fixing things?
Oh, yes. Take things apart and put them back together. Like, you know, get some older things from, you know, maybe a thrift store that it doesn't matter. You can, you know, take some simple machinery apart, and that's, you know, that's a little engineer who wants to figure things out. So, you know, things that aren't, that you can take apart. Here you have to be careful of setting a limit, because then they might want to start taking everything apart, even things that work. So be careful. But that, and then I love woodworking. So, you know, simple pieces of wood, showing them how to, you know, do some nails in a safe way so that they can build, things like that. You know, there's like I say, you know, even fixing things, there's also toys for me that are great, such as Legos or things that are where you're constructing, because there you can use your creativity and create and do things like that.
There's a couple of questions here on bilingualism, but I am going to skip over them because they're quite specific to these people's situations, and we're really trying to cover as many questions as possible. There is a workshop, if you're really interested in bilingualism, that's on our website. That's a 2-hour workshop with, sorry, an 1.5-hour workshop with a bilingual specialist. So if anyone's interested in that.
And we also did a Montessori show on bilingualism as well, I think.
All right, I'll have a look for those resources to send you that way. Okay. Let's go to during the stay at home order. We do have families at our school who are working full-time at home while their children are also home. We offer them daily activities and routines, but it's hard for them to manage that and still do their full-time work. Do you have any suggestions about how we can better support them?
I think it's really taking as much pressure off of these parents. I think, you know, this situation that we're all in, nobody has ever experienced this, so we don't even have our elders to, you know, look up to and say, oh, how did you do it? Because this is all new for all of us. So I think it's important to, you know, give some grace to these parents that it's not going to look perfect, and to really have some open-ended toys and activities that the children can do while you're working, and really, again, reminding them at the beginning of the day or in the evening that just, giving them a heads up of what the situation is, that, we're home and mommy is going to work. If you're alone at home with them, then that makes it a little more difficult. If you have another parent that is home also working, try to take turns as much as possible. If you can, to get up maybe a few hours ahead to get some of your important, quiet work that needs to be done. But it's all about really helping the parents voice and help them collaborate with whoever is in the house together to make things work, because this is definitely very challenging for many who have the stress of still have an employment and still have to show up for work, and you have little ones at home. So yeah, and I don't have a clear answer on that, because every situation is going to be different depending on the age and all of that.
Okay, and Selena asks, how to encourage a 2.5-year-old to have more independent play when they constantly come to you with activities and are pre-verbal and want your attention 100%?
Here it's about, knowing that, again, this is a child that just loves you and wants to be connected. Like there's nothing, there's nothing wrong with it. So if you have the time, you can engage with them. If you don't have the time, it's about like, oh, this is wonderful work you're doing, and I need to do my work. You can do your work right next to me, and I do mine. It's just, and especially these days, children are feeling the anxiety. This is not normal. There's something going on. So they're feeling it too. So really being, vigilant to that as well, to not pretend that it's, business as usual kind of thing. So being okay with having some grace and saying, well, I'm doing something right now, and as soon as I'm done, I can play with you. You can play with, with your toy right here, right next to me, if that's a possibility. But being okay with them, they're just asking for connection. And this too shall pass. Like there will be a time when they want nothing to do with you. So this is a moment in time.
Yeah, so I think you're right. It's like sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. It's that kind and clear way of saying sometimes that you can't, isn't it? And you're building this. I'm hoping that it will get easier for you. And
exactly.
So Kaja asks, my 3-year-old, 3 year, 4 months, and he doesn't like to share his toys at all. How to help him? Great question.
To me, sharing is something that develops. We shouldn't force a child to share. We can be their translator. We can be there and say, oh, I see that, so-and-so would really like to play with your toy. Do you want to, play with him, or do you want to see if there's something else that he might like, or all that? But for me, sharing is something that comes with maturity, and it's not something that I personally enforce on children. I think that children that are happy and well and concentrated and all this will easily share if they've been given that space, and oftentimes they will do it without being asked to. If he's in a place where that's not something he wants to do, that's fine. Now if that becomes an issue where when people can come over to our house again, there are certain things that he really doesn't want to share, then maybe we just need to prepare the environment ahead of time when it's just, maybe that special toy needs to just be put away so it doesn't become an issue. So again, it's about, preparing the environment, preparing them, but like I say, sharing is something that will come naturally, and I do not believe in forcing them to share.
And that becomes like a big thing when they're 6 to 12 years old. They become very social. At the moment, in the first plane of development, they're very much in individual construction, basically. They're focused on themselves. And maybe, Jean-Marie, it might be useful to talk about how they take turns in their classroom with the materials.
So yes, in the environment, we actually, they're basically, sharing is not an issue because the environment itself is set up where there is just one activity for, I had 24 children. There's one activity. There's one sewing a button activity for all 24 children. So you learn to wait. You learn to take turns. That's just part of it. And you do your activity, you clean it up, and you put it back on the shelf so that the next child can do it well. So it just comes naturally. It's not about, having 24, sewing a button activities so I can please everybody. No, it's about learning social skills. There's not enough for everybody to go around, and we just need to wait and find something else to do.
Great. Let's have a look. Which one did I miss? We've still got a few to go. Jean-Marie, are you still okay for another 15 minutes maybe? And then... Yeah,
I think we're up on 3 hours, are we?
We're just going to keep going and going.
My tummy's starting to growl, but...
Okay. Thank you for a fabulous presentation. My son likes to have either me or his father read with him, but before bed, but wants us to stay until he sleeps. He's 3. He has an active imagination about monsters, etc. And at night, he's reluctant to be left alone. Any tips?
That's a tough one, and I don't know as if I'm. To me, that would be more a sleep, kind of a sleep workshop question. For me, it's about breaking it down where with all the sleep training, it's really about at first. So if you're lying down with him, maybe start letting him know that you're going to be just sitting on the bed, and you're leaving maybe a little bit before they fall completely asleep. Also, there might be some good books to get about, I think there's one, it's like there's a monster under my bed or something to really be talking about these ideas that we have, and maybe during the day, have some creative activities to draw up these monsters and all this, so that we really help this child have an understanding that it is him really having this active imagination. There's also some wonderful kind of meditative audios that we can for children now to kind of have a calmer mind when they go to sleep, things like that. But I don't feel equipped to answer this because I'm not a sleep person, but those would be things that I would try if I was in the situation.
And also to note is that we've talked about the importance of being based in reality. And if they've seen monsters on TV, then they think that these are real. So really always being very careful about what our children are being exposed to.
Definitely.
To them, that could be a very scary thing. So that's one thing I definitely check is what's going in.
Definitely.
Include in the replay notes a link to a rainbow meditation, which can be really useful for a child around the age of 3, because to them it is concrete. If you build a rainbow from your heart to their heart, and even if you're in a different room from them, they still feel very connected to you. So first you send them the color of red, the rainbow, and that's then the color of strawberries and cherries, and you build it up color by color. It's really beautiful.
Love that.
Nice too. So let's move on to, there's so many good questions here. I'm sorry, I haven't got my glasses on and I'm losing my track of space. Okay, thank you, both of you. This has been so informative. What would the shelves look like for 3 to 6 if I no longer need to set up activity trays, or does it really depend on the activity?
So you know, as we mentioned earlier on, it's less about trays, but more about areas. It's more about having an area where you can have your arts and crafts material organized, or a place in the closet where you have your sewing box with all your sewing material in it. So it's more about just just like you would for yourself, of, you know, any activities that you're doing, you know where everything is together. So that's what it would be more like. You can still have, you know, a shelf, of course, with their different, you know, a toy, or if, you know, there's a big basket with Legos or something that are more open-ended, or maybe there's a, you know, embroidery project going on, like having something on the shelf that is there to remind them and to engage them in. But it becomes less about these, you know, very structured trays, at least for me in the house. Like it is still trays in the classroom because there are 24 children of different ages. But here in your home, you're creating a environment that they are going to evolve with. So it's really about, you know, is there a drawer in the kitchen that they know they have all their material in? Is there, you know, a place on the shelf where they know they have their, you know, their coloring things? But it doesn't necessarily have to look like the Montessori classroom, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's your home.
Okay, there's another one here on bilingualism, which I'll skip over again because it's, again, very specific. But there's a question about getting them to sleep. If they're 2.5, 3 years old, they might not understand the routine cards. They've lost all routine at the moment because of nursery being closed and everything. And the child that used to sleep at 7 p.m. now only goes down at 11 o'clock with a walk in the pram. We know we need to be more structured with naps, but it's not always realistic working full time and being heavily pregnant, so with less energy. So what advice could you give them to get some routine going even under these situations?
I would say take naps with them, because you probably need to take some naps being being pregnant, like being, you know, checking in with yourself of what is what you can do. And I would disagree with them not understanding routine cards, especially if you do it with them and you take pictures of them doing the activity, because then there's a connection, they're more engaged. And, you know, as much as possible, if you can, just start having a flow in your day when, you know, if you can at all possible, have dinner at the same time, for example, and once dinner is over, you really have a flow of calming and getting into a calm rhythm where we're going to go to sleep.
Okay, for some reason I've lost your picture, Jean-Marie, but it'll come back.
I'm here.
Okay, great, there you are. Someone else's camera came on. Katie also added that a rubberized flannel cloth allows the child to still be independent, but eases changing for parents. So if they're wetting at night,
yes,
that's
good. Yeah.
Bed protectors, which is a good idea if that's happening a lot. Becky said, excellent presentation. I love the positive discipline criteria. Thank you for your time and encouragement. And by the way, my 4-year-old daughter loved your earrings.
Oh, well, thank you.
And Marta asked, can we chat about how much social interaction with peers their age 4-year-old needs? Questions driven by the current situation with isolation. Yeah, what are the needs for social development? I mean, let's ignore, okay, assume that it wasn't the situation. What is the importance of socialization at this age anyway? And then what?
Well, it's interesting because at this age, they're still pretty, you know, kind of what I say a little bit egocentric, like the toddler is, where they're just in their own bubble. There's a lot of like parallel play going on, but they're not yet as social as they will, you know, when they're like 6-year-old, where they're really wanting to congregate in groups and do things like that. So for me, you know, there's definitely, and it's going to depend on the personality. Like I have 2 children, one who couldn't care less and would rather just stay home, you know, by himself, and the other one who's always, you know, a social butterfly. So I think it also depends on the personality. I don't know as if there's a set rigorous amount of time. I think, you know, again, it's about following the child. Like if you really see that they're missing their friends and everything, then yes, make an effort to, you know, especially these days, I mean, we can do FaceTime or whatever, or if you feel comfortable meeting at the park or things like that. But, you know, I don't know. To me, there's no, it really depends on if you have an introvert or an extroverted child, and there's no, that, you know, socialization is great when you can and be in an environment with them, but I don't want to put any pressure on parents that, you know, you have to have so many play dates a week or anything like that, because I don't believe that it's that necessary.
I did notice around 2.5, 3, how my children became more interested in the other children. That's why I was so happy when they could start a Montessori school, because even though my son was an observer, he liked to watch the older children, where before that he was happy hanging out with me. But I noticed I wasn't enough at a certain point.
Right,
so
right.
That's why I think that eventually a 3 to 6-year-old child does like to be in an environment with other age children.
And well, it's the beauty of the mixed age classroom too, because you have all the, you know, diversity. And I know like the older children would, you know, take the little ones and make them their little children or their babies, like when they're doing their pretend play. So,
yeah. And I see in my own classroom at the toddler age, the 2.5, 3-year-olds are starting to try and play together and maybe do work on the Play-Doh together. And then they're still, you know, we're there to guide them. And I know there's people who's been very creative with like organizing play dates where you just have your Skype on and you're doing your thing and they can see their friend and they can chat that way as well, for someone who's more socially oriented. So the last question, Jean-Marie, our son is 3.5 years old and still uses a pacifier when going to bed. What would you recommend to get rid of a pacifier?
I would do a little ceremony of letting the pacifier go. And, you know, there's beautiful ways of just letting it go. That's a tough one because, you know, they've grown accustomed to it. Sometimes it just comes from them where they're done with it. There's probably some good books. I don't know of anyone specific, but I'm sure there's some great stories of, you know, other little 3-year-olds who said goodbye to their binky. I have, you know, heard of wonderful, like little ceremonies of, you know, I'm now a big boy or a big girl, and binky was great when I was a baby, and I don't use it anymore, or have a place where we really, you know, put it away out of sight, so that, you know, it's not as used as much. But I'm kind of, you know, I'm vigilant in using all of these things from the beginning because I don't want to get into this situation. So I've personally, I never used a binky, so I never had that issue. Do you have recommendations for that? Because that's probably more your age group. The whole.
Yeah, when it's 3.5, they can be consciously involved in it. So, oh, you know how you're 3.5, and so you get them involved, and it's been wonderful, and this is your special thing. So it's the same as if you were breastfeeding or if you were stopping with anything that you need to change. It's like, oh, okay, so we can celebrate, you know, this has been lovely and it's time to let it go. And I know that some people pass it on to someone having a new baby or something like this. I don't like to make up silly stories about the fairy coming or anything like that.
No. Yeah.
But I also think that once you've decided, then you mark it on the calendar, particularly for a 3.5-year-old, they can see. And then it actually often we're more attached to it than they are. And we can just hold them and support them, and you cut them, you throw them away, whatever you do to the ceremony. And then you're closed and you just support them. And the other thing is that sucking helps them relax their nervous system. So to just stop it is really hard. You need to then replace it with something else that they can grip onto, for example, to release their nervous system, like a book or a teddy or something else. You can also use the mouth in a different way to like suck yogurt through a straw, and those kind of things can tire out some of these muscles. And I know, because I actually sucked my thumb till I was quite old, and you can't say goodbye to your thumb very easily. So I know how relaxing it is, and that's something like deep pressure massage and things like that. You can actually Google, I'll include them in the show notes if you like, the sensory kind of things that you can add in for saying goodbye to pacifiers. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your comments. Let's see. Everyone said thank you. Oh, thank you. This was wonderful, enriching, and encouraging. Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. I had my son give his passy to my cousin who was expecting. It helped a lot. Thank you. So informative and encouraging from Kristen. Thank you, Simone and John Marie. This has been helpful. Please share resources on multilingualism. I will. Thank you. We talked about it first, so he knew he was giving it up for the baby. Oh, this is about the pacifier. So he was excited to do it as a stage for him growing up. Massey says, thank you a lot. Thank you both. This workshop's been informative. Lots of thank yous coming in. Everyone, this has been a delight. I'll send all your messages to Jean-Marie. And yeah, did you want to say any last words, Jean-Marie?
I would like to say a big thank you to you for organizing this, for inviting me, and for all of you who have stayed on this whole time and all your wonderful questions. So thank you for the opportunity.
It's been so much fun. All right, I'll stop the recording now. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.